This is going to be a bit unusual because I think this is the first time I've ever given a presentation without a time. So after 2 years working in open data, I was finally starting to get the cultural norms. This is a bit of a sort of look back. I was a civil servant for about 35 years. For the first 33 years of this, my career role model was a fictional character called Sir Humphrey Appleby. If you don't know this, there's a British TV comedy series about the civil service, in which Sir Humphrey Appleby was the devious senior civil servant who was always trying to defeat the minister's wishes. And although most of the British public have scorn for Sir Humphrey Appleby, in the civil service, he's a hero. With Sir Humphrey Appleby, you've got to take the smooth with the smooth. And then for the last 2 years of my career role model was Tim Berners-Lee. And my sort of epiphany in this was my first meeting with Tim Berners-Lee on setting up the Open Data Project. And in a sort of civil service way, I'd done a set of draft objectives for the programme. And it was something like the objective of the Open Data Programme is to consider the possibility of moving towards opening up some data subject to the constraints of fiscal envelope, blah, 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 operational requirements, all that. And Tim just sort of put a line through this. The objective is to make the world better. So that's what we tried to do. Across the world, we are actually now seeing, as David Gee said yesterday, an explosion of open data initiatives. As David said yesterday, well done everyone for it. If you shake hands, hug, do whatever you want. If you want to do that again, then feel free. But it's not over. And Francis Fukuyama, in his book on the origins of political power, writes about the early Chinese emperors, which they experienced the problem of unresponsive and sometimes outright rebellious bureaucracies. The emperor's policies were sometimes overtly countered, or sometimes the ministers and the bureaucrats just quietly failed to execute them. And I think what's happening now is that we're seeing a move from bureaucrat 1.0, which just says no minister, to a bureaucrat 2.0, which says yes minister, but quietly fails to execute. And I'll just give you some examples that have recently crossed my desk. Not all in the UK, but there's a famous Yes Minister episode where all the permanent secretaries sit round on the minister's initiative, and they all agree with it in principle, but all say that in their department there are special reasons why they can't implement it. And at the end, the conclusion is, well, we all agree in principle, but no one's actually going to implement anything for a variety of special reasons. So everyone thinks they're different, everyone thinks they're a special case, they think the general policy doesn't apply to them, and it's about making sure that they do see it applying for everybody. Secondly, people start to change the definition. And certainly we've had cases recently where people say, oh, well, our data's free already. So, for instance, we were recently told that the post office address file, which is the list of 24 million addresses in the UK, is free to citizens. And it's free to citizens in the sense that any individual citizen can go to a post office website and look up to 15 addresses a day and use that purely for personal purposes. Sometimes there's information that's free as in, in the famous open source thing, free as in beer, but certainly not free as in speech. So it's not free to reuse, it's not free to publish, it's only free for non-commercial uses. And people within bureaucracies are starting to take the principle that the ministers have articulated and interpret it in a much more limited way. So we've got to be very clear, open means open, and that means redistribute, commercial as well as non-commercial use. We are using an open license. And Fitzgerald yesterday talked about Creative Commons in Australia, and people selecting more restricted licenses. Not all the Creative Commons licenses are open licenses. And she also mentioned yesterday, and I've been looking at also, cases where people take Creative Commons and then add their own special conditions. So they might take CC BY, which is an open license, but then add conditions that cease to make it open. So you've got to, when officials report that they're using an open license, you've actually got to challenge, is it really an open license? Is it really a recognised open license? One of the strengths that we've had by serendipity in the UK is for most central government departments, they do not have the authority to do their own licenses. The National Archives are the licensing authority for general Crown copyright material, and their policy is you will use the open government license. We want to keep users informed. There might be changes to the data, so we'll need them to register, give their inside leg measurements, their date of birth, to references and the like. And you see this on the Met Office site in the UK. I see that the Land Information Services in New Zealand have announced they're doing open data, but you've got to register in order to be able to get any of those data sets, and it's actually quite difficult to register if you're not a New Zealand citizen. Oh, and by the way, you've got to log in to get the data, and it's scripted, and it can be scripted, so an application can't log in, so it's not just a matter of a development key. People need to understand the context of the data. So you need to visit our website first, and certainly we've had cases in data.gov.uk where the link to the data is actually a link to a landing page that gives you a lot of guff from the department, and makes actually sometimes pretty hard to see the data. So the data is the data. Part of the principle of open data or open raw data is you get the data and you put your own context on it. We're winning the argument that there's enormous value in this data. A few years ago, people thought that Rufus here is completely mad. Now this is the new orthodoxy of information economics. But as we convince people the pie is very large, everyone wants a slice of it. And agencies, local authorities are saying, well, if there's so much value in this, we want something back for our taxpayers. Have already paid for the data, so they want to be paid twice. This, of course, kills the golden goose of the economic growth, because actually making it freely available is the way that you get that innovation through, and upfront charging and all that goes with that makes it much harder for new entrants to come in. In many cases, we've seen agencies spend most or a significant share of the revenue that they get in on administering. So if you're going to charge for something, you've got to collect the money, you've got to process the payments, you've got to have some sort of sales force, you've got to have some sort of customer service function, you've got to have IP enforcement, so people just don't take it anywhere. And we have actually got to be very clear that open means open, and the economic gain is maximised, and indeed may not happen if there's a charging layer in front. And corporate IT is starting to strike back, saying, oh, well, we've got to open this data, so let's have a proper system for doing that. And I was looking at one case recently where there were 3 okay-ish sort of data sets which could be published now, but the departmental proposal was, well, we need to integrate these into a single data system, and we'll do that through our corporate IT projects, and then we'll release the data. When will that be, I asked? 2017. And I didn't dare ask how many hundreds of millions of pounds were going to be spent on this government IT project, or indeed whether it would really deliver in 2017. And finally, have we stopped updating that data? Sorry, but it just shows that no one's really interested. And we've certainly seen this start to happen on some of the transparency data sets. Some of the spending data just doesn't appear, some sort of hospitality and expensive stuff. Mysteriously, it's up there for a while and then it just goes away. So, got to watch that like a hawk. And finally, this is a real problem. The killer applications will only use a small proportion of our data sets. So it's better to wait to be asked and then put the resource into opening up just that data rather than opening up everything. Well, that also kills the golden goose here. It's just too burdensome because when you ask for the data, then there's a process, months and months of discussion, and when you get, if you finally get the data, you can't remember why you asked, and there's also quite an evidence, there's quite a long tail effect on this data. Not all the data is interesting to everybody, but most of the data is interesting to some. So, what can we do? We can't look to sort of top-down political edicts, and Francis Fukuyama had this. Chinese rulers had certain tools that modern chief executives don't. They could administer vicious floggings to the bare buttocks of even their most senior ministers. The mind boggles, really. So, what to do? We've got to keep open data on the political agenda. Politicians often think, once they've announced something, job done, move on and do something else. We've got to keep it there, and not just as open data in its own right, but how open data supports other policies of public service reform, of economic growth, of citizen participation. We've got to show more real-world applications. We've got to track performance like hawks and challenge deficiencies all the time, and we will need more automated tools that actually check whether data is still being produced, it's still findable, and so on. We've got to collect and exchange information in the open data community on how specific services are being opened up in different countries. Comparisons, precedents, very, very powerful to the bureaucratic mind. We've got to establish that ecosystem, so if they stop producing the open data, somebody screams. And finally, sometimes we're going to have to make common cause with the data industry, because actually that economic growth that we're all after needs businesses that are going to use that. So we need to work with the data users wherever they are to get the data owners to open up their data. Okay, thank you very much.